We're back with the latest from the Middle East. Several leaders from across the Arab and Islamic worlds are set to hold an emergency summit in Saudi Arabia today. At issue, how to end the violence in Gaza and in Lebanon.
Yeah, one key nation who will be present is Qatar. This meeting comes just days after that country suspended its role as mediator between Israel and Hamas, accusing both sides of not negotiating in good faith. This comes as Israel continues to ramp up its attacks in the region, with Israeli strikes killing dozens in Gaza and northern Lebanon over the weekend.
NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons is live in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Keir, good morning. So just what kind of expectations are there for this summit, and which countries are going to be there?
Well, it's a display of unity, really, by 80 countries from the Arab and Islamic world. And it really is just trying to send a message of support for Gaza and for Lebanon. We just heard from the Secretary General of the Arab League, who says in a statement, today's summit carries a clear message that the world cannot bear the consequences of turning its back on this ongoing massacre. And then goes on to say Israel may need among its remaining friends someone to save it from itself and its actions. So the message is clear. I think it's also a message of how much the world, or at least this region, has shifted in the last year with the events of the last year, Joe.
And Keir, the U.S., as I just mentioned, asked Qatar to kick Hamas representatives out of Doha. That was about 2 weeks ago, which has effectively stalled any negotiations. Why did U.S. officials request that? And is there a sense that neither side is looking to make any progress towards a deal?
Well, diplomats with knowledge of events that I spoke to through the weekend say that Qatar made the decision to end its mediating role, or at least pause it for now, and then informed Israel, Hamas and the United States. So we have a US official saying that they asked Qatar to do it. Then we have a diplomat with knowledge suggesting that effectively it was a bit more of an independent decision by Qatar. But what that diplomat does say is that this is about the failure, he says, of Israel and of Hamas to negotiate in good faith. And there is a suggestion from an official statement from the Qataris that they will reinstigate the negotiations. Kind of, if there's any point, if there's a chance of making some progress.
Keir, we also have to talk about what's happening here. President-elect Trump getting ready to return to the White House. Republicans will have control over foreign affairs. How are leaders in the Middle East and Israel responding to that? What kind of signals are they sending?
Well, I think the conversations here and around the region have no question in them, frankly, that the election of President-elect Trump is going to change things dramatically. And there are interesting questions, many things we honestly don't know about that. As an example, we have Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel saying that he has spoken to President-elect Trump 3 times. But the President-elect has also spoken to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia here, Mohammed bin Salman. So which of those two leaders, both of whom describe themselves as friends of the President-elect, which of those will President-elect Trump actually listen to? And again, you know, the world has changed so much. Just think about this. During President-elect Trump's first administration, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates were in a war in Yemen with the Houthis. And through that war, were effectively in kind of adversaries of Iran. Well, now the vice president of Iran is here at this summit. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia spoke to the president of Iran, Pezeshkian, just yesterday. So the alliances have shifted, the partnerships have shifted. Saudi Arabia trying to play a more diplomatic role in relation to Iran. On the other hand, of course, President-elect Trump has made his feelings about Iran clear. And of course, there are those reports that there was an assassination attempt against him by the Iranians, and we know what Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel thinks about Iran. So there are strong forces in different directions, and the question is, which way will President-elect Trump go?
All right. Keir Simmons, Keir, thank you so much.
Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has demanded that Israel immediately stop its military aggression in Gaza and Lebanon at the opening of a summit of Arab and Muslim leaders in Riyadh. In an address before the Joint Arab League and Organization of Islamic Cooperation Summit on Monday, the Crown Prince, also known as MBS, condemned the massacre committed against Palestinians and the Lebanese people. The summit, according to reports, will focus on Israel's devastating wars in Gaza and Lebanon. Recall that the Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs had announced Monday's summit in late October during the first meeting of an international alliance pushing for a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Your Royal Highness, Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, we will not talk about the historical rights of the Palestinians or the solidarity of both the Palestinian and the Lebanese people and our role to support them and legitimacy of the resistance in both countries and what has embodied of honor and what has provided the iconic fighters and the brave fighters. And will not talk about the Nazi crimes of the Zionist regime and not the transformation of the West as a supporter to become a partner. This will not add to what Muslims and Arabs know and others know in the world today. As far as our summit, we met a year ago and we expressed and we condemned, and for a year the crime continues. So are we meeting today to copy the past, the history, or maybe change in the future and its different dimensions? Last year we emphasized on purpose of ending the aggression and the protection of the Palestinians, and the result was tens of thousands of martyrs and millions of displaced people in both Lebanon and Palestine. In the year 2002, the Arabs started a peace initiative, and the response was more massacres against the Palestinians. In the year 91, we also entered into the good intentions of America by participating in the peace process in Madrid. Peace was provoking their crimes, and this is not a mistake on our directives, but maybe a shortcoming in preparing the appropriate tools. Our tool is the talk, and their language is the killing. We provide peace, and we receive bloodshed. The results staying as is to replace the tools, but changing these results, and that's what we all aim for, require changing the current tools and mechanisms that was tried over time with no avail. If we agree about the principles, how can we transform it into practical application on the ground to achieve our objectives, to determine the tools available to achieve that peace and the targeted entities that will lead turning talk into action, and from agreements and statements to reality. And maybe the objectives when we talk about the rights of the Palestinian people might be evident to us, but what's the benefit from these rights? And they don't have even the basic rights of a living. As we're trying to retrieve or regain those rights of the Palestinians, the priority now to stop the massacres and to stop the genocide. But the tools, I believe that we do possess it collectively on official level, Arabs and Muslims, peoples and countries. We need to take a decision of the use of the tools if the Israel did not agree in our statements, and this is what I expected, and to determine our options then. Should we be angry again? Should we condemn? Should we call upon the international community? Should we impose sanctions? But what is our practical plan? We are indirect partners in this genocide. We're not talking about a country, but we're talking about a colonist entity, an outlaw regime. We're dealing with settlers, more barbaric than humane. And the problem is not with a certain government or this government and the people who are scared of the previous events. They all working with one ideological brain. sick with bloodshedding, suffering from schizophrenia. Those who we target in our meeting today, and they are the ones posing this problem, and this problem determines the mean, and the mean will be the essential for the success. And we're hoping that we'll achieve success in this meeting, and we'll take the appropriate decisions, not to be as one talking to a thief with the language of law, and with the criminal with the language of ethics, and with the killer with the language of humanity.
The tragic consequences of military operations in the Gaza and Lebanon have placed the region in the face of an unprecedented humanitarian crisis. In light of this situation, we consider the decision of the Israel Parliament to suspend the activity of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, the UNRWA, as a blatant violation of the international law. We once again call on all parties involved in the conflict to resolve all disputes solely through dialogue and diplomatic means, referring to the recognized principles and norms of the international law, particularly the United Nations Charter. In this process, we do also support the reinforcement of the leading role of the United Nations and any other efforts made by other influential international organizations, including the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, to restore stability in the region. Meanwhile, with the aim to prevent a protracted war in the Middle East, we urge all countries in the region and the world to take effective actions in the spirit of solidarity, mutual trust, and constructiveness. We believe that the real solution to the Palestinian conflict and building just and lasting peace in the region is only possible through the implementation of the United Nations resolutions. Those are calling for the establishment of an independent and sovereign state of Palestine. Tajikistan firmly supports the establishment of the State of Palestine with its capital as Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, based on the borders of 1967. This is the path through which the Palestinian people can exercise their legitimate national rights as an independent subject of the international community based on recognized principles of interstate relations. In this context, it is critical that we give more support with our further efforts to restart the multilateral dialogue process aimed at achieving a resolution to the conflict. It is regrettable that the efforts of the United Nations in this direction are not yielding results. The UN Security Council is unable to achieve a common position due to differing opinions, even regarding the adoption of a resolution aimed at protecting the lives of the peaceful population. Although conflicts and bloodshed in this Middle Eastern region have reached their height, we see no serious and impactful actions taken by the relevant parties to end the conflict. Furthermore, individual parties have adopted ambivalent position and kept silence, ignoring the humanitarian disaster currently unfolding in the Gaza Strip.